Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with Season 8, Episode 48 of our weekly Q&A videos. If you're on YouTube right now, I say video, but you can also access this as a podcast to do our favorite thing, which is play it in the background while you're playing a game on your device. And to do that, you can access it on most of the major, maybe all, I don't know what all the major ones are, podcast platforms by checking out the links in the description. And then you can, just pop us open on Spotify and maybe play Injustice instead of watching us play Injustice. Well, while you do it, you can play Injustice or do something else, or even just download us and take us with you so that you don't have to have internet to watch our videos. Yeah. So there we go. That's our plug for that. I don't know why I plug podcasts so hard, because we don't make money from it. There's no sponsors or anything. It's like...
That's right. It's costing us cents per view, or fractions of a cent per view.
Oh yeah, like a tenth of a cent for every person that I swan song away from this video.
Probably even less than that. Anyway, sorry. Before we get into the questions, we sort of cut ourselves off a little bit early. I had some thoughts about a question from last year, so I'm just going to do a quick recap of the question.
Yeah.
It was Mr. Injustice.
Let me read it. I'm a question reader. This was the last question of last week, Mr. Injustice. Can I just ask how you grew your channel? I need a few tips so I can grow mine, so I decided to come here since it's similar content and the same topic.
Yeah. Part of it, the original answer that when I was thinking about it was that part of the answer is going to be non-replicable.
Yeah.
It's that you got to start early when there aren't very many channels and when lots of people are playing, which is not the case anymore, and there's fewer channels now than there used to be, but that's, it's a bit of an ebb and a flow. And I feel like it's probably too late to do it the same way we did, so the kind of advice we have is not that applicable to our situation. It's pretty narrow.
Yeah.
Because, listen, the fewer other channels, the less competition there will be for eyeballs.
Yeah.
And the more people playing, just the bigger potential audience.
Yeah.
And you need to offer some sort of value, I think, something that the others don't, to distinguish yourself.
So, I mean, here's the thing, right? We're going to break it down to sort of the really basic principle, because this is what we like to do. If somebody says, what's the best team? How do I make a good team? Whatever. We like to break it down to the really basic principles and then go from there, right?
Yeah.
So, really, when you think about YouTube, the ways that you get viewers, the ways that you get eyeballs on your channel, right?
Yeah.
Is you need to make somebody want to click on your video in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And then hopefully when you pull people in, some percentage of them keep watching your new stuff as it comes out.
The key is really not being dissatisfied and not being disappointed when they've clicked on you.
So you got to bring new people in, and then you got to keep them. And if you sort of go one layer out from that, the main way that you bring new people in is having video titles and video thumbnails that make people want to click on them, because that's the main way that people see your stuff from a distance, and then sort of bring them in and keeping them in the ecosystem. The other way that you bring people in is having either stuff that people are searching for anyways, or stuff that makes the algorithm happy and makes you get recommended in the algorithm. And keeping people in is by just being engaging.
And so that's related to some of the stuff you said last week. One other thing that I wanted to mention, because you mentioned it and you alluded to it again, is the thumbnails. And that you talked about this last time, that we intentionally made them relatively clean and straightforward. We didn't make them clickbaity. But one of the things about the naming conventions, and I remembered this because I got in a discussion with somebody about, your favorite books ever. Yeah. And I don't know if this is an old novel convention or one type of novel convention where the chapter books, instead of just being a chapter number or a really short, like a phrase or a couple words as the title, it would be sentence fragments or like a summary of all the different things in it.
Yeah.
And this isn't even that old a book, but I was going to say it's not that old a book, but it's more than 30 years old now. Boy's Life. Boy's Life was one of my favorite books of all time. And the way that Robert McCammon named the chapters, the title had sort of like a point form kind of summary of all the things that happened in that chapter.
Yeah.
And I when I was thinking about that, old, an example of this would be Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens, but it wasn't. And I don't know why I thought that. Like, my memory is totally not reliable.
One that's kind of a riff on that too is is it Roddy Doyle? Something Doyle? That guy where he has like the...
He did the commitments.
Christmas and stuff?
So he did the kids' books with the dog. He did the commitments. He did Patty Clark, ha ha ha. So he's like a literary writer, but he did some kids' books. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and a lot of this stuff is just sort of going layers out from that, is getting people and keeping them. And the other thing that's really core, and you got to keep in mind that we've done YouTube for long enough that we have some sort of vague idea about stuff, but different people will tell you different things, right? And what we're trying to do is just break it down to a level that's so basic that we can't be lying to you, right? Because if you look at our channel, right, obviously if we had the secret sauce to get a huge YouTube channel, and we're either not using it at all.
Well, this is what's interesting to me, because the question implies that our size is actually big.
Or grown enough that this person would be happy with it.
Right.
And yeah, obviously, I mean, if you look at our engagement numbers and our subscribers and stuff, like, those numbers aren't going up, right?
Right.
So, we're not necessarily the people. So you don't want to do what we're doing mostly, but so engagement is also a good place to start, right? And so engagement means both making literally engaging content, the type of stuff that people like and maybe talk to their friends about or share with their friends, or, come back to and subscribe. And the other way we talk about engagement is those sort of metrics, the data form of engagement, which is what YouTube uses to determine how it's going to recommend you and how it's going to, promote your channel, which is like likes, comments, subscribers, all that type of thing.
If we take a step back from YouTube specific and just content creation in general, there's a truism that I believe: you're never going to make everybody happy. Whatever you make is not going to be universally lauded, where everybody loves it. If you're big enough, you're going to have some haters. Mm-hmm. And I think the corollary to that is that if you need everybody to like you, you're going to be really disappointed. So the key, I think, is to make what you think you would want to watch yourself.
Yeah.
Because if it's something that you really wouldn't want to watch, then not only will you not be satisfied with it, but then the people are going to be picking on you for it.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of, I guess, satisfaction. I'm trying to think of a better word for it, and I can't come up with it. There's not going to be a lot of satisfaction when people start picking on you and attacking you online, which hardly ever happens, right? But if it does, at least you can take satisfaction in doing something that you're really happy with.
Yeah, and the best way to not the best way, but like an absolutely necessary prerequisite to growing your channel is to make content that you can keep making stuff at least vaguely like it. You need to figure out what is sustainable for you, and even if switching it up is what's sustainable for you, if whatever you're doing, you don't have it in you to keep making new stuff and putting out new stuff, then no matter what else is going on, your channel is not going to be able to grow, and you're not going to be able to maintain that growth.
Right.
So part of it even is because there's the way, like, a great way to grow your channel is to spend every waking minute doing YouTube and really putting your all into it, and constantly be like researching and like figuring out how to do new content and looking at like trends and trying to get in on stuff while it's hot and whatever, right? And for Injustice specifically, obviously you can't do that, but that would be a really miserable way of doing things. So you have to figure out, with the free time you have and the access to resources you have and the skill set you have, what is practical for you to do that you can keep making. And the other great thing about doing stuff on YouTube is that it's a great opportunity to build your skills. Right. And there's almost no way to make YouTube content without developing at least a little bit of skills and savvy in one thing, right? Even with our incredibly poorly edited stuff, and all that, like, I've learned a little bit about how to sit in front of a mic and make myself sound mostly the way I want to sound. I've learned a little bit about how to, ramble on about stuff, right? To have this back and forth, like that discussion. And we're doing our setup is not one that actually gives us that much access to the type of stuff that you would learn new skills on. If you're doing video editing, right, that is a place where there's a huge room to learn transferable skills. But even with what we're doing, we've learned something from it. So if you do something, take it as a good opportunity to learn skills that you're going to be able to pull other places, and figure out what a space that you're willing to potentially grow and learn in. But also, just if it was exactly the way it is that you say, yeah, I could probably do this for a while and see if it's a thing I like. I could, stick with it for at least a couple months. Because if that's not your starting point, if you go, I have like 2 of these videos in me, and then if they don't blow up, I'm done. Yeah. You're never going to hit that point.
So it's interesting too, right? Like, it made me think of a bunch of different things. It's definitely not, YouTube specific content is not like other stuff where if you write the best novel ever, you could actually live the rest of your life on it. Like Catcher in the Rye or To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. I mean, they had other books. None of them really mattered the same way.
Yeah, well, I mean, with streaming, there's like, that's true for almost every artist now.
Yeah. The other thing was that there was an example recently where Cory Doctorow, who's a science fiction writer, was talking about how he came up, and people ask him all the time, and what happened for him was it was so specific to his situation, and he was so grateful for Judith Merril, who was a science fiction writer herself. Yeah. Who, interesting, was married to another really famous big science fiction writer, Frederick Paul. Yeah. And that he benefited a lot from her mentorship. And related to what you were saying earlier, sort of the underlying point is, part of it is just start doing it. Yeah. Once you start doing it, if you don't do it, there's certain things you just can't pick up. You can't learn all the things that you do just by thinking about it in theory. Mm-hmm. So part of it is practice and getting... It's like, you know what? It's like picking a team and picking gears. You don't know what that team is going to play like until you've actually played it. Great in theory, but it's not always what you expect once you've actually done it.
Yeah, and no matter how much potential you have, your first thing is always going to be worse than your last thing. If your first thing is not worse than your next thing, if you don't get better as you go, or, at the very least, it gets easier to make it equally as good, then you're doing something wrong, right? Yeah. So, make your first thing and figure out how it feels, and, it can be a really slow process, but if we never set out to actually actively improve our content in a particularly significant way, right? From the beginning to now, there was no time where we sat down and said, we really need to step up our game. This stuff kind of sucks. And there was moments where we very well could have sat down and went, this stuff kind of sucks. We really should step up our game. But it was never super conscious, and it all sort of just happened naturally over the course of stuff. Right. But if you look at our first videos and you look at our videos now, I would say that our videos now I'm happier with them. Sure. And it's not exactly comparable when you look at the glitches, I would say. Because we don't really do anything like that anymore.
Right, because there just isn't the same kind of content possible for that.
Yeah. Yeah. But for whatever the closest equivalent to our videos now is, as you look back, I think our stuff, I'm more happy with our stuff now. Right. And there's been a bunch of stages where our stuff just got a little bit better. And that only happened because we were making videos and we were consistent and we're sticking with it. And eventually, you just sort of stumble into something that's a little bit nicer. Because you'll try new things every once in a while because you're bored or because it's easier to or whatever, or it comes up or you're thinking about it. And then sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. And then when it's better, you stick with it. Yeah, and when it's worse, hopefully you toss it.
I'm going to disagree with that one word that you picked, though, stumble. Because the characterization, I think, is that it just happens. I mean, it's more likely to happen the more you do. Yeah. But I think you have to be at least a little bit mindful and self-aware and self-reflective, so that when you do something and you think about it, that opens you up for the possibility of changing it and improving it. You know what I mean? So it might feel like we're stumbling onto it, just because we've done this so many of these videos. Like, we've got hundreds and hundreds of videos now.
That's true.
So we don't have to be mindful all the time, because I think that kind of intensity it's not sustainable.
Yeah. But that's another thing. I guess what I'm trying to frame it in is the way where I'm not assuming the amount of effort that somebody's willing to put into it. Because there's obviously, right, when we're talking about it, there's a way to put way more effort into it. There's a way to say, how am I going to make every video better than the last one? Right? And that type of thing. But if somebody's coming to us and looking to grow their channel to the point where we're at, you're at a point where it might not be practical. It might not make sense for you to put all that extra effort into your channel. And if you want to, again, that's why we talked about in the last episode, like, do something that you want to do. You have to think about it like a hobby first and foremost. You have to be, you know, willing to do something for the intrinsic reward and not for the popularity. Because if you're what this is essentially doing is starting a hobby and thinking that it's, you know, a lottery ticket, right? Where if you think about it like a lottery ticket instead of a hobby, you are probably going to end up disappointed, right? But if you think about it as something that you can enjoy, it gives you sort of that space to keep doing it even if you don't hit it big, right? Or hit whatever success metric you're looking for. And so, you know, you can put more work into it, you can be more intentional with it, but if you're making stuff, your stuff is going to get better, especially right at the very beginning. Your stuff is going to get better just for having made it, even if you're not thinking about making it better at all. It's very hard for you to learn nothing and take nothing forward when you make your first piece of content, because it's probably going to suck a lot worse than your stuff is going to end up if you just keep making it.
So just do it.
Without anything else.
Just do it. Nike's right.
Yeah. And so we have another question that we're going to roll straight into that's kind of about the same stuff. So we'll see how much of our advice was already applicable to this one and how much new stuff we have to say. But Gander Studios commented and said, "Hey guys, love y'all's content. Question for Q&A. I have serious charisma problems, and that's kind of a problem for a smaller channel. Got any tips/advice for good commentary? Also, I have no idea how to get Red Sun characters." And so this one is interesting. There's a lot of layers, right?
Right, because Red Sun characters you can get in the regular gold pack. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, but so if you're not sure, there are rare drops in the gold pack, but it's the only 3 Red Suns in there are Superman, Wonder Woman, and Solomon Grundy. The other Red Suns are in the challenge pack, so that's Green Lantern, Deathstroke, and Batman.
Yeah, so the charisma problems are an interesting thing. And I think one, because they're kind of like it's kind of a construct, right? It's not to say that charisma isn't like a thing that like matters to like how you move through the world.
So can I just stop you before we get into it? Because it feels like we were stepping back into a conversation we had before we started the video, because your first gut reaction when you saw this was charisma problem. What does Gander Studios mean? And I think there's an implied meaning, right? And I think I don't know that I choose the word charisma, but I think some sort of personality that distinguishes you. And charisma to me implies there's the connotation that it's an attractive kind of personality, which is not always true. Sometimes people like watching channels that are train wrecks.
Yeah, and so I'll say for charisma stuff, I think like being awkward, being, you know, maybe like if what it is you feel like you're not comfortable on mic or not comfortable making content, then what we just said is applicable, which is just keep doing stuff and figure it out, and you'll work towards stuff. I mean, like I was saying, like charisma is kind of a real thing. Like it has a real impact on your day to day, but it's also like a social construct, so it's kind of not a real thing. Where, you know, you have a way of being, and I think a lot of lack of charisma is just, you know, other people not being the right sort of match for you.
Right, the wrong audience.
Yeah.
There's going to be an audience. So here's the thing, right? I would not have imagined doing this channel at all without you. Yeah. I'm not the kind of person that would want to speak into a microphone at length on my own for no particular... well, I shouldn't say that. It's not for no particular purpose. Specifically to talk about a game. Not sustainable. Yeah. I just have no interest in it. And is it charisma? Or is it just that I'm not motivated to do anything that even sort of remotely would resemble like a video? Yeah, well, that's the funny thing, because we would both be, I think, really uncomfortable sort of just talking at a camera, just talking to a microphone, totally by ourselves. Right. In sort of a conversational tone, like anywhere near what we've done. And another sort of thing about just getting better at stuff naturally without trying is that we would have hated that absolutely at the start of the channel. But now, when, you know, it's normally my schedule, because your schedule is a lot more consistent. Right. But my schedule has me not able for a video. You can do a pretty bang up job for at least the recaps, but even for some, you know, like talking in a little bit of patter by yourself, like video commentary without me in the room. And it's just because whether or not you're happy with it still, because you might still be a lot less happy with it comparatively. Yeah. But you're way better than you would have been before we started this channel. It would have been like pulling teeth, you know, then. So and now it's just like, oh, well, you know, I can do this if I need to. I just don't prefer it. It's a less pleasant a variation on what we normally do, and it's mainly to keep something going, right? Like I feel an obligation to our patrons, at least, to not skip days.
Yeah.
To have something there that we can say, hey, thank you guys for supporting us.
Yeah. So if using this comment and the way that it's phrased, we're assuming here that we're charismatic enough to be giving advice. This is sort of the same as the last question, right? Where last one was saying, how do you grow a channel? We're assuming that you think that we're a channel to aspire to, and this person is asking us tips for charisma and commentary. So that's assuming that at least one person thinks that we have charisma or good commentary, right?
Right.
So that was kind of our solve for it, is that we would have pretty terrible patter just talking to a mic by ourselves. So we've never talked to a mic by ourselves. We've talked to each other and then stuck a mic in between us. So
because otherwise, I think if it was one person, it would involve a lot more script and a lot more editing.
Yeah.
Because with very rare exceptions, we do these. We basically sit down. We do this in one go. The only editing we do is maybe cleaning up the noise so there's no background noise.
And so we talk about charisma. I don't actually even know if these videos are still up. But way before Mr. Beast was popular, the way that he is now.
Who?
Mr. Beast?
Who's Mr. Beast?
Oh my god, see, you don't know anything.
I don't.
YouTube.
I don't.
Mr. Beast is like a huge force of nature on YouTube. I've talked to him about, talked about him with you before. Wow. Okay. That one took a couple tries. That would be what we would edit out normally if we edited. But he is the guy who gives away extravagant amounts of money. And who's...
Oh, I've heard about him. Okay.
Yeah, and how I talked to you about how he used it to sort of grow his channel initially, and now... Right. So, before he started doing that, I had... Not like a friend... Like a close friend, but somebody that I hung out with something. I guess a friend is fair. Show me like one or two of his videos when he was doing like list videos or whatever. And what came across to me when I was watching them is like, wow, this guy feels like he's a little uncomfortable sitting in front of the camera like this, and it felt a little bit like awkward to me.
Right.
And not that that was a bad thing. I mean, on a separate point, I just also didn't love his content that much. And there's another YouTuber that I actually quite like and that I watch on a semi-regular basis, like, you know, a lot more than I watch Mr. Beast, but is the YouTube channel, I think it's called The Action Lab. And he just does really sort of interesting, funky, it's like science adjacent content where there's some stuff that's scientific and then some stuff where it's just like he has like liquid nitrogen and a bunch of stuff at his disposal and he just does cool stuff with it.
And freeze it.
Well, no, so like, you know, he one of the videos is like that, like Vanta Black or whatever, or Mushu Black, like one of the world's blackest blacks. He paints an entire room with it. And then shows what it looks like. It's cool, yeah. Or he did another one where he had like an edible like membrane thing, like an algae membrane or something for water. And so he did that, but then he took it a step further and he battered and fried it. So he made fried water.
Oh,
so just stuff like that. Yeah, okay. Those are it's just they're fun. But
interesting conceptually, yeah.
His patter and his actual like audience engagement stuff feels incredibly stiff to me. And again, like I want to be clear, we're talking about that in the context of this. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's like an individual differences thing, and I think like especially with how like perceptions of like social competence are related to like neurodiversity, like evaluating somebody like positively or negatively based off of like something like charisma can sometimes be like an ableist construct and like actually be like a kind of crappy thing to like,
because a lot of that is based on
people.
Not that there's no inherent good or bad value. A lot of it is based on your expectations that have been influenced and in some ways created by the kind of content that we've been fed.
Yeah. So that's why I want to be a little careful when I'm talking about this, because I think it is like a thing that is like important to recognize that has like a real like impact. It's kind of like race, right? Where if you say like race isn't like a real thing and we should just stop talking about it, you're missing out on like really important discussions about like how people have to move through the world right now and stuff that impacts their day to day. But if you sort of put race on this like really strong pedestal and like sort of examine it from all angles, and you're not sort of critical of it as like a concept, then you know fall into that pit of like really legitimizing something that is just a construct. So the hard balance, but you know the important part about those channels is those are two people who I didn't feel like had a lot of charisma, right?
Right.
For whatever that's worth and whatever that means, but who have been successful. So we talked about engagement before, how being engaging is what you need to be, and there's a lot of ways to be engaging. And there are some people who you can just sit in front of a camera and turn it on and they will be really engaging in a way that, makes them well suited for, getting viewers and subscribers and collecting stuff on YouTube.
Right.
But if what you want to do is be engaging, charisma is just sort of one path to that, because that's actually all you need. All you need is to be engaging, and there's a bunch of different ways to find that out. You can have your stuff well researched. You could, tell jokes, right? Work that into it. You could have like snappy editing. One easy way to be engaging is to make your stuff as concise as possible. Because the same information in a 4-minute video instead of a 10-minute video that's really, in the 4-minute video, is snappy and easy to follow, is going to inherently be more engaging. It's going to be easier for somebody to watch that than the same content spread out. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
So if your ultimate goal, I think, is to reach an audience, I don't know that necessarily charisma or engagement is the most important thing, because both of those imply you're attracting people that otherwise would not be there. And I think if you create the kind of content to reach a specific niche audience and you hit it right, you don't have to be engaging, you don't have to have charisma. If it's right for that audience, they'll pick up on it. And if you aspire to more, then maybe you need to do that. Or maybe it's just that you need to find what you're actually good at.
I would argue with you that does fall under engaging. I think targeting it to a niche in the right way, you're making engaging content. You're making content that they want to engage with and come back with. I think engagement is a broad enough term that making content that brings people in or keeps them in, it has to be engaging in some way to them. Well, they're engaging with it.
So this is where the definition words and the sort of interchangeability too, because what I'm trying to answer, I guess, the question that's implied. Because I think for a lot of people, whether it's charisma or engagement, it's the means to an end, and the end is reaching a big audience.
Yeah,
and I think reaching a big audience, it's implied. I don't think that should be everybody's goal, and it's definitely not ours. And I think that's part of the reason why you can find your own kind of success without being big.
Yeah. So our tips and advice for good commentary, we don't have that many tips other than just do it in practice and figure out what feels comfy to you.
Right.
And, try to make stuff that you think is cool. Or that you think is, like a good explanation, or that you think is whatever. Right. It's something that you are happy with at the end of the day.
Right.
Because really, like, we sit in front of this mic and have a broad idea, and we've just practiced, and we're not doing anything specific. We're not, like, going, like, the one rule of good commentary is whatever. We are just rambling and absolutely talking out of our butts. And
that's a great segue. Out of our butts. Okay.
You have something.
So we're running towards the end of it. We've been doing shorter ones, so we're actually getting close to the end of the footage. A double final crystal run on Phantom Zone.
Yeah, this was a very meta thing about making YouTube, I guess, for most of this. Or all of it, maybe.
So there's a phrase that I like to use when I mean a lot.
Yeah.
And I say butt load. And I learned the other day that butt load does not come from your bum. Where I think it'd be a total fair assumption to say you think you've got a butt load, it's a huge amount of poop. But it's not. Butt load is actually a butt is a unit of measurement. And it has to do with wine casks. And I learned this. I've got a link in the description to a Twitter tweet from Whores of Yore. And a buttload does not refer to big bottoms, but is actually a recognized unit of measure. One buttload is equivalent to 126 gallons. And somebody posted a little image that shows that where does a butt fall in? A butt is
second biggest
because you can have a ton, and they're all sort of casks. So when I say casks, they look like barrels, but a barrel is actually 32 gallons. So it's a smaller cask, and a butt is a big cask. So butt load is a huge amount of, I guess, wine.
Yeah, so that's fun.
Not poop. So I learned that. I just thought that was really funny.
Yeah. So, no, that's good. It was a good segue. I think we don't really have enough time for a full new question, so this was a bit of an interesting one. It was a little navel-gazy, and I think part of the thing, too, is that, people are asking us these questions, so we're answering them. I would never presume to be the person to be the expert or speak
like
on
an
these
authority.
topics.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're giving you what sort of our best information is.
Oh,
but
I think it's totally fair. I mean, if they're asking us specifically, it's not like somebody who's asking on Quora and they're asking somebody to answer and we're jumping in like we know. We don't.
Yeah.
But if you're here, and you're asking, we're game.
So that's. Yeah, I think really, honestly, at the end of the day, it's just like practice and find what you're happy with is our advice for most of this stuff. And the good news about that is that you really can't go wrong. If that's what you follow, you really can't go wrong.
Right.
Right? Because the worst case scenario is that you go, well, I'm not really finding anything that I'm happy with doing YouTube. And then maybe you go, well, I can either keep looking for new things, I can keep switching it up, or maybe YouTube isn't going to be the thing that makes me happy.
Right.
And the good news about that is that, you know, if you just seek out either what makes you happy or satisfied or whatever, what you feel good about, right? There's not a lot of ways that you can steer yourself poorly unless you're doing really short-term sort of gain stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's it for this week. We'd like to give a shout out to Eliza Depressing Dinner King. She had a meal that consisted of nothing but a jar of pickles and mixed greens. And I'm not sure if they were there was any dressing on them, but it was a very sad looking meal.
My worst meal was a can of chicken noodle soup and a bag of ranch Doritos.
Oh.
Like a big one, like not the little individual size, but when they used to sell them as 200-gram bags, one of those. And a rehydrated Campbell soup where you had to add a can of water to it.
Well, that doesn't sound like the worst.
It was pretty bad. I felt sick afterwards. It was ridiculously salty. It was unsatisfying. And it was just... Anyway, sorry.
One time in university for dinner, I had nothing but miso soup made from like a little... no, but it's worse than just miso soup. Because it was miso soup made from a little pouch that you just poured in hot water. And I ate that out of the... measuring cup that I made it in, where I got the water, because I didn't want to wash dishes.
Okay, you win.
You know what? But miso soup is pretty tasty, so I think I maybe had a better time with that than you had with yours.
Yeah, I did not feel well after that.
Okay. I've had a lot of meals that I haven't felt well after, but they've mostly been better than that miso soup.
Yeah.
Anyway. And this shout out was brought to you by, still kitchen renovations. So... that sucks. Hopefully, best wishes to get your kitchen fixed up, Eliza, soon. And we'd also like to give a huge thank you to all the lovely folks who support us on Patreon.
And that would be Victor Gomez, Consul Peasant, and Edwoon at the top tier last word. Sinemac and Mohammed Albshaiti at the Your Message Here tier. Shawn Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Maule, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddydoo at the credited level. And Chris Wolf, Scarlett Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E at the gratitude level.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Komoda.